Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Dwight Kay, and I'm the CEO and founder of Kay Properties and Investments. Today, our webinar, we're going to be talking about 1031 exchange replacement properties and overview, the Delaware Statutory Trust, or the DST properties. That's what we specialize in here at Kay Properties over the past nearly 20 years. So let's jump into it. First, some risks and disclosures. The information herein is prepared for educational purposes only and does not constitute an offer to purchase securities, DST properties, or real estate. Such offers are only made through a private placement memorandum, which is solely available to accredited investors and accredited entities. We can't provide tax and legal advice, so please do speak to your own CPA and attorney regarding your Section 721, Section 1031, Section 1033, real estate, as well as DST properties. There's no guarantees for appreciation. There's no guarantees for income. This is real estate, and property values can go up, property values can go down. Tenants can pay their rent, tenants cannot pay their rent. So there's no guarantees in real estate. We encourage everybody to read the private placement memorandum, paying special attention to the risk factors prior to considering an investment in a DST investment. DSTs are only available to accredited investors, generally defined as having a net worth of over $1 million, exclusive of your primary residence. Please speak to your CPA and attorney to determine your accreditation status. Diversification does not guarantee profits or guarantee protection against losses. Past performance is not indicative of future returns. Potential cash flows, returns, appreciation are not guaranteed and could be lower than anticipated. Again, read the private placement memorandum or the PPM for a full discussion of the business plan of the property or the DST, as well as the risk factors of participating in an investment. All information is provided for educational purposes in general in nature, and securities offered through FNEX Capital, member, FINRA, and SIPC. So getting started here today, this is a brief overview of our company, Kay Properties, kind of who we are, what we do. We are a real estate investment firm specializing in Delaware statutory trust investments for 1031 exchange investors. We've been doing this for nearly 20 years. I personally started investing in DSTs in 2008. And since then, we've helped over 4,000 investors purchase DST, 1031, and 721 UPREIT investments. So we're largely regarded by pretty much the entire industry as the largest specialty firm in this unique segment of the real estate world. Nobody's been chosen by over 4,000 investors to help represent them and walk them through the potential pros and cons of investing in DSTs for a 1031 exchange more than Kay Properties and Investments. So we're really proud of our accomplishments and our track record and the clients that we've been able to help over the years. We've done over 10,000 of these specific transactions. So we've seen a thing or two over the last nearly 20 years. What makes Kay Properties unique is that since we specialize in this unique segment of the real estate world, we have the resources to really dig in to the offerings, really dig into the sponsors, really dig into the real estate. We've got a full team of staff and analysts, due diligence team, that really digs in and goes through each one of the offerings in a way that a typical financial services firm, a lot of wealth managers sell DSTs, they do one a year. We're doing 25 or so a week. And so we have the resources. I've personally invested in over 100 of these DSTs. And then also on top of that, we don't just show you one or two different DSTs like most of the wealth management firms do, because they don't do that many DSTs per year. They're not specialized in it. They're doing stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So when you're in a 1031 exchange, they'll show you one or two properties. We think that's a flawed model. We think it's really serves the investors better to be able to see pretty much the entire market of DST opportunities available and compare and contrast the potential pros and cons of each of the different properties or DSTs. It's similar to how if you were to go and want to buy a 15-unit apartment building in your town, you wouldn't want the agent to say, this is the best one. You'd want to see the entire market, everything available both on and off market. That's what we've brought to the DST world with the KPI1031.com marketplace. You're able to register, verify your accreditation status, and then from there view DST opportunities from over 25 different Delaware statutory trust sponsor companies. And that's typically 20 to 40, maybe 20 to 50 different offerings, both on-market DSTs as well as off-market DSTs only available for our clients. So the KPI 1031 platform, 1031.com platform, has really been a widely adopted tool for investors that want to see the entire marketplace. So jumping in, that's a little background on our company. Jumping in, this is an overview of 1031 replacement properties. We're going to do some of the requirements set up by the IRS for you to have a fully tax-deferred exchange. Again, we can't provide tax and legal advice, but these are the basics that you want to discuss with your CPA and attorney. So number one, what are the basic 1031 exchange requirements for full tax deferral? Number one, use a qualified intermediary. That's the separate, neutral, third-party escrow type company that when you close your property you're selling that you want to do a 1031 exchange out of, you close escrow, you don't take constructive receipt is what it's called, of the proceeds from that sale. Your proceeds from that sale, the property you sold, need to go to your qualified intermediary, and then from there, the qualified intermediary holds the property or holds your proceeds, your funds, and you direct that qualified intermediary. These are the properties that I want to exchange into, okay? So you've got to use a qualified intermediary, also called an exchange accommodator, 1031 QI, various acronyms for qualified intermediary. But that's very important. I can't tell you how many times, we've helped over 4,000 investors do these types of 1031 exchanges into DSTs nationwide. I can't tell you how many times our team gets a call from an investor that wants to do a 1031 into DSTs, but they've already, and we say, well, who's your qualified intermediary? And the investor goes, what does that mean? They've got, excuse me, the investor never set up their qualified intermediary account. So now they have a failed exchange, okay? So it's very important, use a qualified intermediary. If you need a referral to a qualified intermediary, we've worked with dozens and dozens of them. We can absolutely help you out and get you in contact, okay? So that's number one. Number two is reinvest 100% of the net sales proceeds into the replacement properties. So for you as an investor, if you want a fully tax-deferred exchange, like most of our clients do, and you sell your property, say you got $1 million of equity that goes to your qualified intermediary. If you want a full tax deferral, you're not able to only invest $700,000 and peel off $300,000 of it. If you do that, that's called boot, and that boot is fully taxable, okay? It might make the most sense for you. Oftentimes, we'll talk to clients and say, hey, look, we know you have $1 million at your qualified intermediary. Have you looked at your liquidity? Have you looked at any expenses that you've coming up over the years? You might want to peel off a portion of that equity, maybe $200,000 or $300,000, pay tax on it, and get liquid and defer the bulk of your capital gains taxes using the 1031 exchange. So it is something that you should consider, with your CPA, your attorney, your family. Do we really want to reinvest all of this equity, these proceeds into a 1031 exchange, or should we get liquid on a portion of it? Okay, but if you want full tax deferral, you're going to have to reinvest 100% of the net sales proceeds. Number three, purchase an equal or greater value in replacement properties as you had of relinquished property. So say you sell your property for $1 million. For you to have that full tax deferral, you've got a 1031 exchange into a property at that same property. You sold for $1 million, you got to buy for $1 million. You could sell for $1 million and end up buying for $800,000. You could do that, but you wouldn't have full tax deferral. Okay, so if you want full tax deferral, excuse me, you've got to purchase equal or greater value as your down leg, the property sold, into your up leg. Okay. So number four, identify replacement properties within 45 days of closing escrow on the relinquished property. So your down leg or your relinquished property, that's the property you're selling. You want to defer the taxes. You sell that property, proceeds go to your qualified intermediary. And then from there, you're going to identify within 45 days with your qualified intermediary the properties you would like to exchange into. Okay, the IRS has strict guidelines that you have to follow these timelines. 45 days from the day escrow closes, you've got 45 total days to let them know what you're going to close on, okay? Number 5, close on your replacement property. Closing on the replacement property must be the earlier of either 180 calendar days after closing on the sale of the relinquished property or the due date for filing the tax return for the year in which the relinquished property was sold, unless an automatic filing extension has been obtained. Okay, so 45 days to identify what you're going to exchange into, and then a total of 180 days in general to close on that property. Okay, so it's really important to keep track of these. And your qualified intermediary, typically they'll be sending you email notices, reminding you. If you're working with K Properties, most of our clients that do 1031s into DSTs and this strategy, we've got them closed typically well before the 45 days is even over. Okay, so they're completed with their 1031 exchange very quickly. But these are the basic rules. And again, talk to your CPA, your attorney, and we can dig into those when you register at our website, www.kpi1031.com. You'll get connected with one of the K Properties advisors that's assisted hundreds and hundreds of exchangers just like you completing 1031s into DSTs, and they can walk you through the specifics here so that you can get further versed as to how it works. So again, here we are with the timeline. The first part here, close of escrow. So the exchanger closes escrow on the downleg property, the relinquished property, and funds are transferred to the qualified intermediary. You've got now 45 days, a total of 45 days to identify the chosen replacement properties with your qualified intermediary. And then you've got 180 days, like I said earlier, to close on the replacement property in total. Okay, so that's the timeline. Very important to follow the timeline. You do not want to be in a situation where you didn't identify in time or you didn't close within 180 days, because you will have a failed 1031 exchange. A question we often get here at K Properties is, what does like-kind property mean? So some examples of like-kind property. A lot of people, they have this misconception that, well, I'm selling a single-family rental, so like-kind would be another single-family rental. Or I'm selling an apartment building, so like-kind would be another apartment building. Yes, that's true. However, any type of property that is held for investment or business purposes is able to be 1031 exchanged as like-kind property. So say you sold an office building, you could exchange into an apartment building. Say you sold an apartment building, you could exchange into raw land. Again, investment or business purposes. Say you sold a piece of land, you could exchange into an industrial property. You sold a single-family rental property, exchange it into a duplex. You sell your farmland, you can exchange it into an apartment building. Any type of investment real estate is able to be exchanged into a Delaware statutory trust, okay? And again, the Delaware statutory trust has been deemed like-kind by the by the IRS, and we'll get into that next slide. I jumped ahead of myself. So another frequently asked question, what is a DST 1031 property? A DST 1031 property is a type of replacement property used for a 1031 exchange as well as for direct cash investments. Has the IRS approved the use of a DST property for a 1031 exchange? Yes, the IRS has approved the DST structure as compatible as like-kind for a 1031 exchange. And they did this back in 2004, and it was under the IRC Revenue Ruling 2004-86. You can look it up on the IRS website. But basically the IRS said, yes, a piece of real estate, investment real estate, held in a Delaware statutory trust, which is the entity, use the whole title of the real estate, properly structured according to these guidelines, will indeed qualify as like-kind for the purposes of a 1031 exchange. How quickly can an investor close on a DST property? Typically within 3 to 5 business days. So, and the reason why is because DST properties, the property's already been purchased by the DST sponsor. So all the appraisals, the environmental reports, property condition reports, your financing, your SNDAs, your estoppels, anything that you would need to diligence on buying a property on your own, and the hoops you would have to jump through to close on an asset, that's already been done by the DST sponsor. Okay, it's all been completed. These DSTs, if they're closed on, have been pre-packaged for 1031 exchange investors. So you're able to, as an investor, receive the private placement memorandum, go through the business plan, the risk factors. You can look at all these things, appraisals, environmental reports, property conditions, estoppels, etc. You can look at all that and then decide, does this make sense for me? Yes, I'd like to move forward and close. That's why it can happen within 3 to 5 business days of submitting your completed paperwork. You can be closed on the DST, and it really solves a big conundrum for investors. The 45 days goes very quickly in the 1031 timeline. And so, somebody closes their property, and, we work with clients, people selling, a single family rental in Kansas for, 50 grand to a client selling a portfolio of, hotels or industrial properties or farmland for $50, $100 million, whatever it is, we run the gamut. The 45 days comes quickly for all of them. And knowing what you might be able to identify, I'm going to purchase these 3 properties or this handful of properties with your qualified intermediary, but will you be able to close on it? A lot of times clients will think they're going to buy something and they'll use us as a backup ID, and maybe in their diligence on that asset, they find an issue, an environmental issue, or some misrepresentation by the seller, or the lease wasn't what the seller said it was. Something's wrong with the property and they don't want to buy it anymore. So having a backup ID like a DST that can be closed on quickly makes a lot of sense. So examples, what are some of the examples of the types of DST properties available through K Properties and Investments? So again, K Properties, we work with over 25 different DST sponsor companies. Some of the largest real estate and financial institutions in the world post their properties on the KPI1031.com marketplace. Some regional operators, specialty operators, runs the gamut. So we have groups that specialize in apartments, in self-storage, in industrial, in small bay industrial, in net lease properties, groups that specialize in debt-free properties, some that specialize in zero coupon properties for debt replacement, right? In a 1031 exchange, again, equal or greater value, right? And so, healthcare, medical buildings, retail properties, runs the gamut. And when you register and log in at KPI1031.com, you're able to see all those different sponsors, all their different strategies, and our team will walk you through the pros and cons of the various strategies and help put together a portfolio that hopefully accomplishes your goals and objectives. And, again, we're looking at this through the lens of we've completed 10,000 of these transactions over nearly 20 years. Okay, so we've worked with all these sponsor companies for many years, a lot of them. We've invested personally with these sponsor companies. We know which ones do a good job and which ones don't do a good job, quite frankly. And we're going to be steering you in, you're getting the benefit of our experience on your exchange today that we've been building for you as an investor over the past almost 20 years, okay? And so that's one of the reasons why more people choose us at K Properties to help them with this specific transaction. They don't want to be a guinea pig for some wealth manager that does one a year, right? And has never invested in them personally, right? Or reasons like that. So jumping forward here, what are some examples of DST 1031 properties? So I'm going to give some examples of what it could look like, right? To invest in one of these things. Now, these ones that we're showing, they're not available for investment. They're fully subscribed. Future offerings will vary. If you want a list of the current DST 1031 properties available, just register and log in at www.kpi1031.com. But these are just some examples for the purposes of the webinar. So this one here, Essential Net Lease 81 DST. This is a portfolio of debt-free properties, okay? Featuring a Tractor Supply Company store, a Frito-Lay Industrial Distribution Center, and a Sunbelt Rentals Distribution Center. So Tractor Supply, one of the tenants, is the largest retail farm and ranch store in the U.S. with over 2,000 stores in 49 states. Frito-Lay is a market leader of the snack industry nationwide and is owned by PepsiCo. And Sunbelt Rentals is a leader in general equipment and tool rentals with over 1,100 locations nationwide. So it's a portfolio. It's 3 different properties in one DST. Very common for DSTs to have one property or have multiple properties, okay? And we have both types of strategies at K Properties. And so this portfolio was debt-free. It was 3 long-term net lease properties in one DST, with some high-quality tenants, okay? Again, these are all fully subscribed 506C offerings, not available for investment. hypothetical. We'll show you the current available ones. And everything is different, right? The markets change, but very similar to some of the stuff that we have available now. This next one was Essential Net Lease Industrial 87 DST, almost 27,000 square foot FedEx Ground Distribution Center in Sierra Vista, Arizona. It was a strategic logistics location. It's nearby US Highway 90, which is the primary thoroughfare of Sierra Vista and connects this part of Arizona to Interstate 10. It was nice because it had an early lease extension. So FedEx had recently signed an early extension, reaffirming their commitment to the location. This one, again, is not available. None of these ones that we talk about are available right now, but we can show you, when you register, you log in, you get to see current available if you're in a 1031, what's available right now. So this next one, very kind of typical DST offering from many of the sponsors. It's the Amira DST. It was in Tampa, Florida, newly renovated and expanded 2020 to 2023, Class A multifamily, property purchased below appraisal value, $3.1 million in recent capital improvements, located in Tampa Metro near the Tampa International Airport, as well as a bunch of abundance of major retailers, entertainment employers. So very typical Class A multifamily DST. We've had many clients exchange into these types of investments over the past nearly 20 years. The beauty of the DST is that you don't have to bet the farm on one property, one location, one asset class, one tenant, right? If you're in a 1031 exchange and say you have $15 million of equity, sure, you go out and lever up and buy a Class A apartment building. Well, what happens if insurance triples, right? And it hits your cash flow and all your equity's in there and your cash flow drops? Or what happens if you buy a $15 million distribution facility and the property's tenant goes bankrupt or doesn't renew their lease? Where with the DST, what we're doing with clients is building portfolios whereby they're taking that $15 million of equity and they're doing $2 or $3 million chunks into different DST properties, different strategies. So they're building a diversified portfolio and a diversified strategy that, yes, there can be stuff that happens in all different types of real estate, per the risk factors in the PPMs, but it doesn't over-concentrate you into that one asset. And that's why some of the largest real estate families in the world have hired K Properties, chosen us to help advise them. How would you allocate this capital? What would you build as a portfolio? Okay. That's the beauty of the DST. So you get the same type of real estate, but without that over concentration and betting the farm, so to speak, on just one particular property. This next one is a 129 unit build for rent community. So build for rent, it's basically horizontal apartments. This one is called the Valley Ridge BFR Housing DST. It's got a long-term fixed rate loan on it for debt replacement. At K Properties, we're big on don't take on more debt than you actually need. Okay, so if you're selling a property debt-free, don't go into a bunch of DSTs that have debt on them. We see other wealth managers or advisors having people do that all the time. It's a terribly flawed mistake. If you're debt-free now, in general, you're going to want to stay debt-free, okay? There's maybe some outstanding reasons why allocating to a little bit of debt may make sense, but in general, you're going to want to stay debt-free on your DST portfolio, just like you were on the property that you sold, okay? So at K Properties, we're big on debt-free. We have a lot of debt-free options, but we also have options that have loans on them, right? And so if you put $100,000 into a DST at a 50% loan to value, you just bought $200,000 worth of that property, okay? You were attributed your portion of the debt from the loan, okay? And so that's how you purchase that equal or greater value. So if you need to replace debt, we have those, and we can walk you through some various strategies that we've done to hopefully mitigate some risk when taking on leverage, okay? So why is it that people do these DSTs? Why are so many people, participating in DSTs? Baby boomers that are selling properties, don't want to have to manage anymore. Also, kids of the baby boomers that are focused on their career or families or their kids, they don't want to have to manage a 100-unit apartment building or a portfolio of 27 single-family homes that their mom and dad amassed. Why are so many people choosing the DST structure? So number one is simplicity. No more tenants, toilets, and trash. Okay, each one of the DST sponsor companies, they operate the DST property on your behalf, on my behalf as an investor in that property. So they're the ones micromanaging the property manager, right? They're the ones getting the calls for the tenants, toilets, and trash. They're the ones that are dealing with the everyday issues that come up with owning and operating real estate. In a sister company of K Properties, we have a portfolio of over $1 billion of debt-free DST properties. So we have a full team of, financial analysts, accountants, property managers, asset managers, acquisition team, disposition team, a full investor relations, full team that does all that for those investors. So the DST, no more tenants, toilets, and trash. They have professional asset and property management in place. It allows you as an investor to concentrate further on what really matters to you at this stage in life: kids, grandkids, travel, other businesses, etc. And it gives you a freedom to enjoy life without the burden of actively managing your apartments and commercial properties. Again, over 4,000 investors nationwide have done this with us because they see that value. They want to be diversified, which obviously diversification doesn't guarantee profits or protect against risk, but we do believe it's a prudent strategy, especially when people are over-concentrated oftentimes, where they bought a property for $1 million and 15 years later it's worth $20 million, right? And we've had clients where it's common. And so all of a sudden, a big part of their net worth is tied up in one single property in one single town with one asset class, and they're dealing with all the headaches. They want to get out of the headaches. They don't want to manage it anymore, and they want to diversify and not be so over-concentrated in one property. And that's the beauty of the DST strategy, okay? So DSTs, they help to potentially reduce risk through diversification of your 1031 exchange equity. So the typical minimum investment of a DST is $100,000. This allows an investor to spread out his or her equity into multiple property types, whether that be multifamily apartments, self-storage, industrial buildings, medical buildings, triple net or net lease buildings. Really build a diversified portfolio. You can diversify into all cash debt-free properties. We also have leverage properties, as I explained. A lot of times, we'll have a client that has to replace debt, and through some strategies that we have at K Properties, we're able to still get that client exposure to some debt-free DSTs that have no risk of leverage and lender foreclosure. So that's a unique strategy a lot of investors like to use. And then also multiple geographic locations. And again, some would say we're overly cautious in disclosing risk to investors. I think that investors deserve to be told the truth about these investments. I think that investors need to be dealt with very straightforwardly. And we're going to talk to you about the potential good things of DSTs and doing this type of investment, also the potential cons, the potential risks that can happen, right? And so although diversification, like I said earlier, makes a ton of sense as a strategy that most of our investors use when we do these DSTs with them, it's a strategy I personally use as I'm investing in these. But it is, again, not something that guarantees profits and does not guarantee against losses, okay? So next slide here, why consider all cash debt-free DST properties? So quickly, we'll jump through this. One, no refinancing risk, okay? If you've got a 5, 7, or 10-year commercial loan on a DST that you did back in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, guess what? The markets have changed. It's tough out there. Interest rates have risen tremendously, and your loan's probably coming due. There's a lot of DST sponsors that have loans coming due that they weren't anticipating interest rates having gone up 300 basis points and the volatility in the market. And so if you go into a DST right now that is debt free, you remove that risk, okay? Number 2, eliminates the risk of taking on equal or greater debt in future 1031 exchanges. Very important. Number 3, provides 1031 investors the ability to diversify a portion of their exchange dollars into all-cash debt-free properties in an effort to reduce potential risk. Number 4, it gives you flexibility to hold through any potential market downturns, credit crunches, recessions, and/or depressions. Case in point, if you have a debt-free DST and it's coronavirus 2020, 2021, 2022, why would you want to sell in a down market, right? When you could but if you have a loan coming due in 2020, you got to sell that property, you're going to be foreclosed on, right? Or any type of recession, right? Where if you're debt-free and we hit a dip, right? And something happens and there's, some sort of outstanding catastrophe or, war or economic decline, you just hold it for another 2, 3, 4 years until it's the right time to sell. And that's that flexibility that if you buy into a DST that has a loan on it, they're typically 5, 7, or 10-year loans. That's a hard maturity date. And it's a balloon mortgage, and the lender will come and take the asset if you don't pay it off in time. And so flexibility to hold and sell into an optimal market at the right time, at the right price, that's what you get with debt-free investing, okay? You have no cross-collateralized loan risk found in certain leveraged DSTs. There's certain leveraged DSTs that from a cursory glance, it seems to make a lot of sense. It's a large portfolio, 10, 15, 20 properties, looks good, good tenants, good credit. But the problem is there will be a 5 or 7 or 10-year mortgage on those properties, and it's cross-collateralized, meaning if one of the tenants in the property, something happens where they go bankrupt or they take the store dark, it could affect all the other properties and the entire DST, right? It could cause a cash flow sweep scenario where the lender said, if the tenant's credit rating drops below a certain amount, we're sweeping all excess cash flow, okay? Or if one of the stores goes dark, we're sweeping all excess cash flow. So cross-collateralization is a big risk. And that's, again, one of the things that we're looking at K Properties and trying to allocate appropriately so that our investors are able to sidestep some of this stuff, right? Obviously no guarantees, but we've done this a lot. It's kind of like a knee surgeon that's done 1,000 knee surgeries. He's really good at it. That's how we are with DSTs, where we're not going to use you as a guinea pig like a typical wealth manager. A lot of the big wealth management firms, great companies, great firms, they do great at stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and insurance. Well, now they're doing DSTs, they're doing 1031s, and they're over allocating investors, entire exchange into one strategy, one sponsor, and they don't really know the implications or the ramifications of doing that. And so we're able to help our investors sidestep some of those mistakes. And then also, lastly, and I touched on this, no cash flow sweep risk as found in certain DST properties with debt. Lenders have covenants. They've got loan covenants. And if you don't adhere to those, they can sweep your cash flow. And that's if you buy a property and put debt on it yourself, or if you invest in a DST that has debt on it, that's a risk, cash flow sweep risk. So debt-free, you avoid that. So that's pretty much wraps up the overview today. If you have more questions, we've got a wealth of information that we'd love to provide to you for free. Just register at our website. We'll give you free access to the online marketplace of current DSTs, again, from typically over 25 different DST sponsor companies. We also have 721 Exchange UPREIT DSTs available as well. So a large menu of options. We can walk you through the pros and cons, the risks, what we see as the risks, which ones we would not want to consider based on certain scenarios. So you're going to get a lot of information by registering. We're also going to get you our complete 1031 Exchange DST Investor Kit. It's really kind of where you would want to start. It's going to give you the free subscription to our 1031 DST Digest magazine, which has case studies and various strategies written in article format. We'll get you that. We'll get you our current listing menu of debt-free and leveraged DST offerings, as well as 721 UPREITs. And then we'll also get you a copy of the first book ever written on Delaware statutory trust properties, which I wrote back, years ago. We were doing a lot of these DSTs my first one that I invested in personally was 2008. And as, things progressed and had a lot of blessing from the Lord and the companies were growing, so many people had the same questions. And so I thought to myself, you know what, let me just, I've been writing articles in real estate journals for years. Let me put these all together, make a book. And when they have the questions, we'll hand them the book. And that was the first ever book written on Delaware statutory trust properties. So we'll send you a copy of that. We're also going to give you a copy of the first ever book written. We just published it on 721 exchange UPREITs. I just published this 3 or 4 months ago. 721 exchange UPREITs can be potentially a good option. They can also be a horrible option if you don't know what to look for. And again, that's where our team at K Properties, we spend a lot of resources on our due diligence and analysis team that are digging into these 721 UPREITs and looking at the health of the properties. Just because it's a large institution or a household name does not mean that that program is healthy and that I would want to ever invest in that personally, let alone have a client invest in it. And so we're digging into the public filings, the Ks and Qs, a lot of stress tests, a lot of spreadsheets, and helping investors understand if you're going that route, here's the ones that we think make the most sense, right? Based on our experience of almost 20 years of these things. So the 721 Exchange UPREIT book, we'll send that to you as well. We'll get you a copy of that for free. All if you register at kpi1031.com. This is pretty much the end of the webinar. Our team's here to assist you any way possible. K Properties, we're your dedicated 1031 DST resource. We're headquartered in Los Angeles, the South Bay of Los Angeles in Torrance. That's the beautiful Pacific Ocean there. And we'd love to have you come visit us at our office. We also have satellite offices throughout the country. And we do investor events. We have K Investor Day coming up here. That's where many of the top DST sponsors and top UPREIT sponsors in the industry, we bring them together. We've got our investors coming in, flying in from out of state, and we have a full day of overview and analysis on the DST space, walking through due diligence, walking through the sponsor's process. You get to hear it from the horse's mouth. It's a really, really powerful thing. And if you're considering a 1031 exchange and the DSTs, we'd love to have you come. You'll be glad that you made it. So with that, feel free, reach out to us. We're here for you. We're here to help you out in this journey, to help you decide, does this make sense for you or not? Many clients, it's a great solution. Other clients, we'll tell them, hey, based on what you've told us, this really doesn't make sense for you right now. So that's the benefit of working with K Properties. We're not beholden to one transaction. We're doing a lot of these every day. So thank you so much for joining us. Again, read the PPMs, the risk factors, read the business plans, talk to your CPA and attorney, no guarantees with real estate. And again, we just appreciate you guys joining us today. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.